Princess Zara lived in a world made of light. Her home planet, Celesta Prime, was covered in massive crystal towers that sparkled like diamonds in the sky. The people who lived there, called the Luminari, were beautiful creatures who could make their skin glow in different colors. They talked to each other using these light patterns, like a secret language painted across their bodies. But Zara was different. She was born without the ability to see these lights. In a world where everything important happened through glowing colors and flashing patterns, she lived in complete darkness. Her people thought this made her broken, incomplete, like a flower. Without petals, the palace where Zara lived was magnificent. Every room was filled with floating crystal sculptures that created rainbow light shows. The walls themselves could change colors, showing moving pictures and messages. Visitors from other planets always gasped in wonder when they saw it. But for Zara, it was just another place she moved through carefully, feeling her way with her hands and listening to the sounds around her. Her parents, the king and queen, loved her deeply. They would hold her close and tell her stories about the beautiful lights she couldn't see. But even they sometimes looked sad when they thought she wasn't paying attention. They worried about her future, about what would happen when they were gone. You see, in the galaxy, marriages between royal families were like business deals. They helped planets work together, share resources, and stay peaceful. Every princess and prince was expected to marry someone from another world to make these connections stronger. It was tradition, and tradition was everything in space politics. For the past 5 years, Zara's parents had been trying to find her a husband. They sent messages to every important family in the galaxy, hoping someone would be interested in their daughter. The responses were always the same at first: excitement about marrying into the royal family of Celesta Prime, one of the richest and most powerful planets in the galaxy. But then the suitors would arrive for their formal meetings. The first was Prince Kale from the warrior planet of Zarian. He was tall and strong, with muscles that could crush steel. He walked into the throne room expecting to meet a glowing princess who could dazzle him with light shows. Instead, he found Zara sitting quietly, her hands folded in her lap, unable to see his impressive appearance or respond to his flashing greeting patterns. The meeting lasted exactly 15 minutes. Prince Kale made polite conversation, but his disappointment was obvious. He had expected a wife who could stand beside him at military ceremonies, creating brilliant light displays to inspire his troops. How could a blind princess do that? He left the same day, claiming urgent business back home. Next came Lord Theron, the richest merchant in the trade systems. His family controlled the shipping routes between a dozen planets. He arrived with a fleet of golden ships and gifts worth more than most planets' entire treasures. But when he realized Zara couldn't see his expensive presents or appreciate the glowing jewelry he had brought, his enthusiasm faded quickly. He stayed for 3 days, then left with his ships and his riches. The pattern repeated over and over. Admiral Rax from the Space Navy, who needed a wife to host diplomatic dinners where everything was communicated through light signals. Duke Voss from the mining worlds, who expected his bride to negotiate contracts using the traditional glowing handshake ceremonies. Prince Jorik from the ice planet, who had traveled for months just to meet her. Each suitor came with hopes and left with disappointment. Some were kind about it, making gentle excuses about incompatible family traditions. Others were crueler, openly stating that a blind princess could never fulfill the duties of a royal wife. A few simply disappeared in the middle of the night, too embarrassed to even say goodbye properly. The worst part was how the galaxy started talking about Zara. Space news reporters called her the unmarriageable princess. Social media across dozens of planets shared memes about her situation. Some people felt sorry for her, but most just saw her as a curiosity, a sad story to gossip about. But Zara was far from helpless. Over the years, she had developed incredible abilities that most people never noticed. She could walk through the palace's maze-like corridors perfectly, never bumping into anything. She had memorized the voices of every single person who worked there, over 3,000 people. She could tell what mood someone was in just by how they breathed or the way their footsteps sounded. She could identify different types of food by smell alone. even complex dishes with dozens of ingredients. She knew when it was going to rain. Hours before the weather computers predicted it, just by feeling tiny changes in air pressure. She could sense when someone was lying to her because their voice would change in ways that others missed. Most amazingly, she could navigate the palace gardens in complete darkness, knowing exactly where every plant, fountain, and pathway was. Located, she had developed a kind of mental map that was more detailed than any computer system. She could even predict when the palace's pet birds would sing based on the time of day and the temperature. These skills made her incredibly perceptive about people and politics. She often understood the true meaning behind diplomatic conversations, better than advisors who could see every light signal. She could detect alliances and betrayals just by listening to how different ambassadors spoke to each other. But none of this mattered to the potential husbands who came to meet her. They only saw what she couldn't do, not what she could do. A day. We're looking for a princess who could light up a room, literally. It's not one who could understand the hearts and minds of everyone in it. As her 25th birthday approached, the pressure on her family grew stronger. Other royal families were starting to question whether the rulers of Celesta Prime were strong enough to protect their alliances. Some planets had already begun making separate deals with other worlds, bypassing Zara's family entirely. The whispers in the palace grew louder. Servants talked about whether the princess would ever find a husband. Government officials worried about the political consequences of having an unmarried heir. Even Zara's own cousins, who had all married successfully, looked at her with a mixture of pity and concern. Through it all, Zara remained dignified and hopeful. She continued her daily routines, studying languages and history, practicing her diplomatic skills, and preparing for the day when she might finally meet someone who could see past her blindness to the person she really was. But with each failed meeting, that hope grew dimmer, like a candle burning down in an endless night. Commander Chen had never planned to become a diplomat. Back on Earth, he was a simple engineer who fixed broken machines and designed new technology for the space program. He was the kind of person who preferred working with his hands rather than sitting in fancy meetings or wearing expensive suits. His friends used to joke that he was more comfortable talking to computers than to people. But sometimes, life takes unexpected turns. When Earth finally made contact with other planets and joined the galactic community, they needed representatives who could understand both technology and people. Chen's bosses noticed that he had a special gift for explaining complicated things. In simple ways, he could take the most complex engineering problem and break it down so that anyone could understand it. More importantly, Chen was honest. In a galaxy full of politicians who spoke in riddles and hidden meanings, his straightforward approach was refreshing. When he said something, people knew he meant it. When he made a promise, he kept it. This made him perfect for representing Earth in the complicated world of space politics. Chen had been working at the human embassy on Celesta Prime for 6 months. Every day was a new adventure in understanding alien cultures. He'd learned to navigate the crystal corridors of the palace, figured out how to eat food that glowed in the dark, and even started to recognize some of the basic light patterns that the Luminar used to communicate, the other diplomats at the embassy thought. Chen was doing well, but he often felt out of place. The formal dinners were especially challenging. While other ambassadors created beautiful light shows with their alien technology, Chen could only stand there and watch, feeling like someone trying to join a conversation in a language he didn't speak. It was during one of these state dinners that Chen first noticed Princess Zara, while everyone else was engaged in elaborate light displays. Flashing and glowing to show off their importance, the princess sat quietly at a side table. She wasn't participating in the visual conversation, but Chen noticed something interesting about her body language. She was listening intently. Her head tilted slightly as if she was hearing things that others missed. Most people would have assumed she was bored or left out. But Chen, with his engineer's mind for details, saw something different. The princess was following the conversation perfectly. Her facial expressions changed at exactly the right moments. She smiled when someone made a joke, even though she couldn't see the funny light patterns. She looked concerned when serious topics came up, responding to the tone of voices rather than visual cues. After the dinner, Chen found himself curious about this quiet princess. He had heard whispers about her situation, about how she was considered unmarriageable because of her blindness. But watching her that evening, he saw someone who was clearly intelligent and aware, someone who was experiencing the world in a completely different, but equally valid way. Chen decided to request a formal meeting with Princess Zara. This was unusual. Most ambassadors only met with the king and queen or their chief advisors. But Chen explained that he wanted to understand luminary culture better, and who better to learn from than someone who experienced it differently than everyone else. Their first meeting was scheduled for 30 minutes. It lasted for hours. Chen had prepared a list of diplomatic questions about trade routes and cultural exchanges, but the conversation quickly moved beyond formal topics. Princess Zara was fascinated by Chen's descriptions of Earth. She wanted to know everything about how humans experience their world without relying on light patterns. Chen found himself describing things he had never thought about before. He told her about the feeling of sand between your toes at the beach, about the sound of rain on a roof, about the smell of fresh bread baking in an oven. He talked about how humans used music to express emotions, how they showed affection through touch, how they communicated through the subtle changes in their voices. Princess Zara listened with incredible attention. She asked questions that showed she understood not just the facts, but the emotions behind them. She wanted to know if the sound of ocean waves was really as peaceful as poets claimed, or if the scent of flowers could really make people feel happy. In return, she shared her own unique perspective on palace life. She told Chen about the subtle sounds that revealed palace secrets, how she could identify who was walking down a corridor just by their footsteps, how she knew when someone was nervous because their breathing changed, how she could sense the mood of an entire room just by listening to the way people moved and spoke. Chen was amazed by her abilities. She described navigating the palace gardens by memory and sound, creating detailed mental maps that were more accurate than any computer system. She could predict the weather by feeling tiny changes in air pressure that the palace's advanced sensors missed. She could identify different types of food by smell alone, even in complex dishes with dozens of ingredients. More than her abilities. Chen was impressed by her intelligence and wisdom. Princess Zara had insights into galactic politics that surprised him. She understood the motivations behind different alien cultures better than many professional diplomats. She could see through diplomatic lies and half-truths that fooled others. When Chen mentioned some of the challenges Earth faced in understanding alien customs, Princess Zara offered perspectives that were incredibly helpful. She explained the emotional significance behind certain luminary light patterns. It helped him understand why some alien species reacted badly to human directness, and gave him advice on how to navigate the complex social rules of galactic society. By the end of their meeting, Chen realized he had learned more about effective diplomacy in 4 hours than he had in his previous 6 months on Celesta Prime. But more than that, he had genuinely enjoyed the conversation. Princess Zara was funny, thoughtful, and engaging. She made him think about familiar things in completely new ways. Chen requested another meeting the following week, then another. Soon, these meetings became a regular part of both their schedules. What had started as diplomatic curiosity was becoming something much more interesting, a real friendship between two very different people, who saw the world in unique ways. Each conversation revealed new layers to Princess Zara's character. She was kind but not naive, intelligent but not arrogant, strong but not bitter, despite everything she had endured. Chen found himself looking forward to their meetings more than any other part of his work week. For the first time since arriving on Celesta Prime, Chen felt like he was truly connecting with someone. As for Princess Zara, these conversations with the straightforward human diplomat were becoming the highlight of her otherwise predictable days. As weeks turned into months, Chen began to see things about Princess Zara's world that others completely missed. Their friendship had grown deeper, and she felt comfortable sharing experiences that she had never told anyone else. What Chen discovered made him both amazed and angry at the same time. During one of their regular meetings, Princess Zara mentioned how visiting ambassadors would sometimes forget she was even in the room. They would discuss important political matters right in front of her, assuming that because she couldn't see their light signals, she couldn't understand what was happening. They had no idea that she was actually following every word and understanding the situation better than most people with perfect vision. Chen started paying attention to these interactions during formal events. He watched as diplomats would speak. Differently when Princess Zara entered a room, their voices would become artificially loud and slow, as if she were a child who couldn't understand normal conversation. Some would even ignore her completely, talking to her parents or advisors instead of addressing her directly. The most painful moments were when Chen witnessed the subtle cruelty of galactic high society. At one dinner party, he overheard a group of alien nobles making jokes about the defective princess. They laughed about how desperate her parents must be to find anyone willing to marry her. They spoke in hushed tones, not realizing that Princess Zara's enhanced hearing meant she could hear every cruel word from across the room. Chen felt his blood boil. These people had no idea who they were talking about. They saw only what Princess Zara couldn't do, completely blind to her extraordinary abilities. It was like judging a brilliant musician by their inability to paint, or criticizing a master chef for not being able to dance. One evening, Princess Zara offered to show Chen something special. She led him through the palace gardens after sunset. When the area was completely dark, Chen had to use his phone's flashlight to see where he was going, stumbling over roots and bumping into low branches. But Princess Zara moved through the darkness like she was walking in broad daylight. She guided him to a hidden section of the garden that even the palace guards didn't know about. Using only her sense of touch and smell, she identified dozens of different plants and flowers. She could tell which ones were healthy and which ones needed water just by touching their leaves. She knew which fruits were ripe and ready to eat simply by their scent. But the most amazing part came when it started to rain. Princess Zara had predicted the weather change 20 minutes before it happened. Feeling the subtle shift in air pressure that Chen's human senses couldn't detect. As the rain began, she led him to a small, covered pavilion that he never would have found on his own. Sitting in that pavilion, listening to the rain fall around them, Chen realized something important. Princess Zara didn't experience the world as a limitation of the sighted world. She lived in a completely different sensory reality that was just as rich and complex as anyone else's. In many ways, her world was more detailed and nuanced than what most people experienced. Chen began sharing these observations in his reports. Back to Earth, the response from his government surprised him. Human society had spent centuries learning to appreciate different abilities and perspectives, had developed technologies and social systems that recognized the value of diverse ways of experiencing the world. Earth's leaders became very interested in Princess Zara's unique abilities. They saw potential for cultural exchange that could benefit both species. Human scientists wanted to study her enhanced senses, not as medical curiosities, but as examples of human potential that could lead to new discoveries and innovations. Meanwhile, Chen found himself thinking about Princess Zara more and more. Their weekly meetings had become the highlight of his time on Celesta Prime. He looked forward to her insights, her questions, and her unique perspective on everything from politics to philosophy. She had a way of seeing through people's motivations that was almost magical. Princess Zara was going through her own changes. For the first time in her life, she had found someone who truly understood her. Chen didn't treat her like a broken person who needed fixing. He didn't speak to her in the patronizing tone that others used. Instead, he engaged with her as an equal, someone whose opinions and ideas were valuable and worth hearing. She began to realize that her feelings for Chen were different from the friendship she had initially expected. When he was away on diplomatic missions to other planets, she found herself counting the days until his return. When he shared stories about his life on Earth, she felt a longing to be part of that world where people were valued for who they were not judged for what they couldn't do. Chen was experiencing similar feelings. He had come to Celesta Prime as a professional diplomat, but Princess Zara had opened his eyes to possibilities he had never considered. Her intelligence, compassion, unique way of understanding the world had captured his imagination and his heart. One afternoon, As they sat in the garden discussing the complex politics of interstellar trade, Chen found himself studying Princess Zara's face. She was animated and passionate as she explained her ideas for improving relations between different species. Insights were brilliant, her compassion was genuine, and her determination to make the galaxy a better place was inspiring. In that moment, Chen realized that what he felt for Princess Zara went far beyond friendship or professional respect. He was falling in love with her, not despite her blindness, but because of the complete, remarkable person she was. She had shown him that true sight had nothing to do with eyes, and everything to do with understanding, empathy, and the courage to see the world differently. The question now was what to do about these feelings. Chen knew that pursuing a relationship with Princess Zara would be complicated. It's controversial and potentially dangerous for both of their careers. But he also knew that some things in life were worth taking risks for, as their friendship deepened into something more. Both Chen and Princess Zara began to wonder if they had found something that the rest of the galaxy had said was impossible. A connection that transcended all barriers and expectations. Chen had been thinking about his decision for weeks. Every morning when he woke up, every evening before bed, the same question filled his mind. Should he tell Princess Zara how he really felt? The safe choice would be to keep quiet, finish his diplomatic mission, and return to Earth with his career intact. But Chen had never been one to take the safe path. The turning point came during a particularly difficult day at the palace. A group of wealthy merchants from the Titan system had arrived for trade negotiations. Chen watched in disgust as they openly mocked Princess Zara during a formal dinner. They made jokes about her blindness, laughed about how no one would ever want to marry her, suggested that her parents should just give up trying to find her a husband. Princess Zara sat through it all with quiet dignity. But Chen could see the pain in her face. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her water glass. Her breathing became shallow and controlled, the way people breathe when they're trying not to cry. In that moment, Chen realized he couldn't stay silent anymore. After the dinner, Chen found Princess Zara in the gardens where they often met. She was sitting by the fountain, looking more defeated than he had ever seen her. The cruel words from the merchants had clearly hurt her deeply, even though she tried to hide it. "They're wrong about you," Chen said quietly, sitting beside her. On the stone bench, every single word they said was wrong. Princess Zara smiled sadly. "You don't have to be kind to me, Chen. I know what the galaxy thinks of me. I've heard it all before." "That's not kindness talking," Chen replied. "That's truth. And I need to tell you something else that's true." He took a deep breath, knowing that his next words would change everything. "I love you, Zara. Not because I feel sorry for you, not because I'm trying to be noble or different. I love you because you're the most remarkable person I've ever met. You see the world in ways that make me want to be better. You understand people and situations that confuse everyone else. You're brilliant, compassionate, and strong." Princess Zara was quiet for a long moment. Chen could hear his heart pounding in his chest, wondering if he had just ruined the best friendship of his life. Finally, she spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "I love you too," she said. I've been afraid to admit it, even to myself. But spending time with you has been the happiest part of my life. You make me feel like I'm enough, just as I am." Chen felt a wave of relief and joy wash over him. But he knew that admitting their feelings was just the beginning. If they wanted to be together, they would have to face challenges that neither of them had fully prepared for. The next morning, Chen requested a formal meeting with the king, and Queen Palace protocol required him to ask their permission before he could officially court their daughter. When he announced his intentions, the royal couple was speechless. The king recovered first. "You want to marry our daughter?" he asked, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Yes, Your Majesty," Chen replied. "I know this is unusual, but I believe Princess Zara and I could build a strong partnership that would benefit both our worlds." The queen looked at Chen with a mixture of hope and concern. "Are you certain about this? Do you understand what you're asking? The galaxy has not been kind to our daughter. Marrying her would not be an easy path." "I understand the challenges," Chen said, But I also understand that Princess Zara is an extraordinary person who deserves to be loved and respected. I would be honored to be her husband." The news spread through the palace like wildfire. Within hours, every servant, guard, and official knew that the human diplomat had asked to marry the blind princess. The reactions were immediate and intense. Some palace staff were genuinely happy for Princess Zara. They had watched her endure years of rejection and humiliation, and they were excited to see her finally find someone who appreciated her. Head cook, who had always been kind to the princess, cried tears of joy when she heard the news, but others were skeptical or even hostile. Several alien ambassadors questioned Chen's motives, suggesting that he was either trying to gain political advantage or was simply naive about what he was getting into. Some human diplomatic staff worried that Chen was risking his career and possibly damaging Earth's relationship with other galactic powers. The galactic media went crazy with the story. News outlets across dozens of star systems ran headlines like "Human Diplomat Proposes to Unmarriageable Princess and Earth Representative Makes Shocking Marriage Request." Some coverage was sympathetic, but much of it was sensational and cruel. Talk shows on various planets debated whether Chen was being noble or foolish. Some commentators praised him for seeing past Princess Zara's blindness. Others suggested that humans must have very low standards if they were willing to marry someone that the rest of the galaxy had. Rejected, the worst reactions came from some of the alien nobility who had previously rejected Princess Zara. They seemed personally offended that a human had succeeded where they had failed. A few even suggested that Chen's proposal was insulting to the entire galactic community. Chen's own government was divided. Earth's leaders were proud of their representatives' courage and integrity, but they worried about the diplomatic consequences. Some officials suggested that Chen should be recalled to Earth before the situation became more complicated. Through all the chaos and controversy, Chen remained focused on what mattered most: Princess Zara's happiness. He worked with Earth's finest artists to create an engagement gift that she could fully appreciate. Instead of the traditional glowing jewelry that most alien suitors offered, commissioned a complex musical composition that told the story of their relationship. The music was accompanied by a detailed sculpture that Princess Zara could explore. With her hands, every texture and shape in the artwork represented a different moment in their friendship, from their first meeting to their realization that they loved each other. When Chen presented these gifts to Princess Zara in a private ceremony, her joy was unmistakable. She traced every detail of the sculpture with her fingers, listening to the music with tears of happiness streaming down her face. For the first time in her life, someone had created something beautiful specifically for her way of experiencing the world. "Yes," she whispered before Chen could even formally ask the question. "Yes, I will marry you." Their engagement became official that day, sending shockwaves throughout the galaxy and setting the stage for a wedding that would change interstellar society forever. The wedding planning began immediately, but nothing about it was simple. Princess Zara and Chen wanted a ceremony that honored both their cultures while creating something entirely new. The challenge was making it meaningful for someone who experienced the world through sound, touch, and emotion, rather than the elaborate light displays that dominated luminary celebrations. Chen worked closely with Princess Zara to design every detail. Instead of the traditional glowing decorations, he chose flowers with rich fragrances that would fill the air with natural perfume. The ceremony would take place in the palace gardens, where the sounds of fountains and birds would create a beautiful backdrop. They planned a musical program that told their love story, with instruments from both Earth and Celesta Prime playing together. The guest list became a diplomatic challenge. Initially, the king and queen suggested a small private ceremony to avoid controversy. But as word spread throughout the galaxy, something unexpected happened. Requests to attend started pouring in from across the star systems. Not all of them were from people who supported the marriage, but many were from those who were genuinely curious about this unusual love story. Representatives from Earth arrived weeks early, bringing with them technologies and traditions that could be adapted for Princess Zara's needs. They worked with luminary craftspeople, to create tactile wedding decorations that she could appreciate through touch. They designed a wedding dress that incorporated both earth silk and luminary crystal fibers, creating something that was both beautiful to see and wonderful to feel. The most meaningful preparation was the creation of new wedding vows. Traditional luminary marriage ceremonies involved complex light displays where couples would literally shine their promises to each other. But Princess Zara and Chen wanted something different. They wrote vows that focused on understanding, respect, and the courage to see the world through each other's eyes. 3 days before the wedding, disaster almost struck. A group of conservative alien leaders threatened to boycott all future diplomatic relations with Celesta Prime if the wedding proceeded. They argued that allowing a defective princess to marry would set a dangerous precedent and weaken the entire galactic social structure. For a few tense hours, it seemed like the political pressure might force the royal family to call off the wedding. Emergency meetings were held throughout the palace. Some advisors suggested postponing the ceremony until the controversy died down. Others worried that backing down now would make Princess Zara's situation even worse. The solution came from an unexpected source. Princess Zara herself requested permission to address the Galactic Council directly. This was unprecedented. No one had ever asked a blind person to speak before the most powerful political body in the galaxy. But Princess Zara had a plan. Standing before representatives from hundreds of worlds, Princess Zara delivered a speech that changed everything. She spoke about the importance of judging people by their actions rather than their limitations. Shared stories about the insights she had gained from experiencing the world differently. Most importantly, she talked about love, how it could bridge any gap and overcome any obstacle. Her words were carried live across the galaxy. Millions of beings watched as this quiet princess, who had been dismissed as unmarriageable, displayed wisdom and grace that put seasoned politicians to shame. By the end of her speech, even some of her harshest critics were reconsidering their positions. The wedding day dawned bright and clear. The palace gardens had been transformed into something. Magical paths were lined with flowers chosen specifically for their scents. Musicians from a dozen different planets had gathered to perform. The fountain in the center of the garden had been modified to create gentle, musical sounds as water flowed over specially designed stones. When Princess Zara walked down the aisle, guided by her father's arm, there wasn't a dry eye in the audience. Her dress rustled softly with each step. She moved with the confident grace of someone who knew exactly where she belonged. She had memorized every step of the path, every word of the ceremony, every note of the music. Chen waited for her at the altar, wearing a formal Earth military uniform modified with luminary crystal accents. As Princess Zara approached, he felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of the moment. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a statement that love could conquer prejudice, that understanding could overcome fear, and that two people from different worlds could create something beautiful together. The ceremony itself was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. When Princess Zara and Chen exchanged vows, they spoke in each other's languages, their words translated for the diverse audience. Instead of the traditional light displays, they sealed their promises with a musical duet. Chen sang a human love song while Princess Zara played a traditional luminary melody on a crystal harp. The moment when they were pronounced husband and wife was marked not by flashing lights, but by the release of hundreds of scented petals into the air, and the playing of a harmony that combined musical traditions from both their worlds. The sound was so beautiful that even the most skeptical guests found themselves moved to tears. The reception that followed became a celebration of diversity and understanding. Guests from different species shared stories about love and marriage. In their own cultures, children from various planets played together, learning games from each other's worlds. The evening was filled with laughter, music, and the kind of joy that transcends language barriers. 5 years later, Princess Zara and Chen had become one of the most respected couples in galactic society. Their marriage had not only survived but thrived, becoming a model for other interspecies relationships. They had 2 children who inherited the best qualities of both parents, the sensitivity and perception of the luminari, combined with the practical wisdom and directness of humans. But perhaps the most important change was in how the galaxy viewed disability and difference. Princess Zara's story had inspired reform movements across dozens of worlds. Schools began teaching about different ways of experiencing reality. Workplaces started recognizing the value of diverse perspectives. Most importantly, parents of children with disabilities found new hope for their futures. The love story between Princess Zara and Chen proved that sometimes the most profound connections happen when people look beyond surface differences to discover the extraordinary person within. Their marriage showed the galaxy that love truly could transcend any barrier, and that the most beautiful relationships often grow from the courage to see the world through someone else's eyes. Years later, when people told their story, they always emphasized the same point. Princess Zara had found someone who chose her not despite her blindness, but because of the complete, remarkable person she was. And Chen had discovered that the greatest adventures in life come not from exploring distant stars, but from opening your heart to someone who sees the universe in ways you never imagined possible.